this is our second event. If you saw the first one, then you'll notice some changes. What are the changes today? One is I'm wearing makeup.
Oh, Linda's wearing makeup. I think,
and I'm not going to talk too loud today.
Oh, you're gonna be quiet.
Because the last time I watched it, and I thought two things: I have no makeup, and I'm too loud. So, and then there's another big change. I would like to, before we begin, because we're going to be talking about visiting Broadway, right? Visiting, New York, but the Broadway Theater District specifically, where we used to do tours in that neighborhood all the time. And didn't we take it so much for granted?
I did. I mean, it's crazy to admit, as someone who lived in New York City for almost a decade, and of course, you being a local, you lived there a long time, to say that I miss walking around Times Square, but
did you ever think you'd say that?
I know. I don't think that I would have ever, but I do. I miss.
Also want to make sure, there was something that bothered me last time, that we didn't send a shout out to the community and everybody, all the gig workers and independent contractors, both from our theater world and also from our tour guide community that we're both a part of. Just a big shout out and lots of love, and hang in there. And I'd like to just kind of lift a glass to them. Bobby, cheers.
Cheers.
Eyes. Okay. Also, just in case I don't want to forget, I have a very dear friend who's an actress, a working actress. Her name is Catherine Cates, and she's going to be our special guest in 2 weeks. But I saw her in a play a few years ago in New York with Nick Cordero called Good Girl. And I remember when I saw the show, I wasn't, so I remember I saw the show Good Girl, and it was, like a kind of a new production. It had a small run, and I loved it. I've seen Catherine in a lot of things, small things, big things. And this was like a medium-sized thing, and I saw it, and it was wonderful. And I remember saying to her after the show, you know who was really great? That guy. And she's like, oh, that's Nick Cordero. He's just wonderful. He's very talented and the nicest guy in the world. And I was like, he really stood out. He's still there. And there was some positive signs a couple of days ago that he was showing some signs of responding, and that maybe he'll wake up. And so anyway, just seriously, my heartfelt love to the whole community, and especially to Nick Cordero, who's sort of been symbolizing this for a lot of people in the theater world. So, so she's keeping positive, and so that's what we're gonna do. Everybody's stuck. Everybody wants to visit places around the world, so we're gonna take you to New York City. And today's theme is traditions and superstitions.
Yeah, it's if for those of you who are watching who are from the theater community, we can be a little bit of a crazy bunch in all aspects of our lives, but we tend to be quite superstitious people. Historically, theater people, they haven't always been the fanciest, most well-paid people on the planet. So, when a gig can be hard to come by, and you want to do everything in your power to make sure that gig is as successful as possible, you end up adopting a lot of superstitions and fun little traditions over the years. So Linda and I are going to share some of our favorites that are near and dear to us and the people that we hold dear to our hearts as we go along today. So it's very cool.
And also, let's welcome, we have some attendees, Bobby. We got Fareed. Hi, Fareed. We got Adrian, Steve, Joaquin, Richard, Helene. Bonjour, Helene.
Bonjour. I don't see any of these people.
Now, you guys can post in the chat. There's Fareed saying hello back. So you guys, as we go along, you guys and gals, if you have any comments or questions, bonjour, just feel free to type them in there, and we'll definitely get to all the questions or comments. Okay.
Right.
So Bobby, I know you kind of have like a couple of really great stories. And so I
So
know
yeah.
you want to kick it off and tell me about like, superstition that you observe, or is there a superstition that you think is just stupid?
I mean, the thing is I am probably not personally the most superstitious person, but um, when it comes to being a member of the community and playing into some of the tried and true superstitions, I would say I'm a believer. And I've had some firsthand accounts that have made me second guess my personal non-believerness. The big one to talk about first is probably the most famous theatrical superstition, right, Linda? And it involves one of the most famous plays ever written by one of the world's most famous playwrights. Can anybody guess where I'm going with this? I think you're allowed to type it. So if anybody,
yes. Don't say the name. No, just it's the Scottish play. That's it.
Scottish play, or
we don't want to jinx ourselves.
We don't want to jinx ourselves, and I don't even want to use one of the other nicknames because they get too close to home. But the Scottish play is a play by Mr. William Shakespeare, the Bard himself. It is set in Scotland. That's why we call it the Scottish play. And the play is titled after the surname, the last name of the main character of the show. Normally, you would be able to say, like any other Shakespeare play, Richard III or King Lear, or you would normally say the title. However, this play has a superstition that's endured since the very first production of the show that was involved with Mr. William Shakespeare himself. And it involves witches. So that's kind of cool. For anyone familiar with the Scottish play, there is a scene, or there are three characters in the show, three witches who do a lot of devious things in the plot. And according to the legend and lore,
Oh no, Nathan! I was going to post that.
According to the lore is that Mr. Shakespeare himself put actual legitimate, I guess you would call them Wiccan. If there's any Wiccans watching, I apologize if I'm misrepresenting this, but put actual incantations into the show. So he didn't just write like nonsensical stuff for the witches to recite. He wrote actual spells in the play itself for the witches to say. And because of that, a coven of actual witches apparently cursed the original production. And a lot of misdoings happened during the original production. They've also happened in various productions throughout history. And so as time has gone by, you are not allowed to say the name of the play, of the character, especially inside of a theater. That's like
Nathan said it.
He said it. So you're not. The only time
starts with an M.
The only time you're allowed to say it, the M word, is when you are in physical performance. I don't even know if you're allowed to say it during rehearsal, Linda. I think you might have to say something else at rehearsal. You have to be in actual performance of the show. And if you say it anywhere outside of that, really bad things will happen to you. And in order to break the curse, do you know how to break the curse, Linda?
No. Is it, oh wait, let me guess. Is it that you have to go outside?
You have to do something
and
outside.
Walk around like counterclockwise?
Yeah, I don't know if it's counterclockwise, but maybe. You have to go around the theater 3 times, and then you have to curse to the sky, and then you have to bang on the theater door and beg to be let back in. Now, of course, they don't have to let you back in because they don't want bad things to happen, but that's how you break the Scottish play curse.
Well, now, are you a believer in this? I mean, have you ever heard of anybody who's had anything bad happen to them?
Okay,
when
so
they said,
I probably said it before because, again, personally, I'm not a huge I believe in all tons of superstitions. But I've had 2 experiences on Broadway, and one's just more anecdotal, but the other one's legit, that made me think I'm not going to ever say this word again unless I'm doing the show, which I have no reason to do the show. So I'm probably never going to say the word. The first is this one right here. So this is from a Broadway production of the show. And these were plastered on the doors. So this is how serious our community takes it. This is from the Barrymore Theater on Broadway. I believe that this was the revival starring Alan Cumming, where he played all the parts, which was fantastic. If you didn't see it, Alan Cumming played all the characters except for a couple minor ones that were played by a doctor and a nurse. He was locked in an insane asylum. But this was plastered on the walls. This wasn't a joke. This was dead serious. Like, do not say the name of this show inside this theater, because that's how serious we take it. So that's my first little anecdotal one. But my real life experience was on the 4th of July in several years back when I went to see this show on Broadway, which was Rocky the Musical. And I could tell you all sorts of magic about this. I adapted my Broadway tour at one point just so I could talk about Rocky.
Gosh, we're gonna have to do a sometime in the future, maybe in a few weeks.
Right.
The connection between Broadway musicals and movie musicals.
Right.
Because where I stand on that.
Right.
But anyway, continue.
Not important for today's story, but I did see it on the 4th of July one year because me and my friends had maybe had a couple of these that day. And we thought to ourselves, what's the most American musical on Broadway? And we're like, well, Rocky, obviously. And so we got discount tickets to Rocky. We walked up to the box office and probably paid maybe $40 a seat. And we were seated at the Winter Garden, which has a beautiful balcony. And if you can sit towards the front of it, it's the best seat in the house because the stage is so wide. We had front row balcony seats to Rocky. And during intermission, me and my friends were talking, and we were probably talking, this was around the same time, it all blurs together for me, but it was around the same time as the Alan Cumming production of the Scottish play. I had said, it's in passing or whatever, I had said the M word in the theater at intermission. And I wish that I was joking what I'm about to tell you. In front of us, at the edge of the balcony, are all the lights that point down to the stage. One of them short-circuited, like went and started smoking right in front of us, right after I said the M word. And my friends turned to me and they're like, you are going to theater hell, Bobby. Like, you need to go outside and do whatever. And I just sat there and I probably had a cocktail in my hand and I was just like, and I'm just going to watch the rest of the show and I'm not going to say anything. So if I wasn't a believer before that, I absolutely, at intermission at Rocky the Musical, became an absolute believer in that superstition.
Now, let me ask you this. There's another superstition that I do observe, and it is, have any of you out there who have like theater friends who are about to open, you're about to go up, which means, the show's going to start performing. Because I don't assume everybody would know what go up means. The play is about to go up. So did you ever say to somebody who's about to go up in a production that good luck, and they like freak out? Yeah. And you could always tell, and it's a lot of times a lot of well-meaning friends and family, they'll come to one of your shows and you're going to open tomorrow and they'll be like, so good luck. And you're like, no, because what are we supposed to say? Did anybody know out there?
Helen wrote it.
I'll bet Nathan knows. Let's see. Let me see. Where do you see this? I am the worst person when it comes
and then
to
said another one.
I'm looking at private. Okay, sorry. There she goes. Yes, Helen wrote break a leg. Yes. Now this is interesting because there's different theories about where that expression comes from.
Right.
So when I was doing tours in New York, the Inside Broadway tour, I remember we used to stand out there on the street and talk about, it was right near the M&M store, like right around that corner, remember? And my favorite explanation for it, which I subscribe to, is in Shakespearean days when they would take a bow. If there was moderate applause, they would just bow from the hip. But if there was wild applause, they could take a very deep bow, and they would actually have to like bend their leg to get the deep, deep, deep bow. And I heard that that's where the expression of break a leg comes from.
That's
your
news.
Thoughts?
That's news to me, Linda. This is a new one.
Yeah, well, yeah. Now, I don't know if anybody else has heard a reason for why you say break a leg. That I've also heard that because of the ghosts that hang around the theater that like to make mischief, that you say the opposite of what you want to happen, and the ghosts hear that because they do what the ghosts are going to do the opposite of what you say. So
Yeah,
if you
like,
say have a great show, they're going to make you break your leg. But you know, but I like the Shakespearean thing, because if you've seen pictures of like Shakespearean productions where people bow and they take a deep bow and their knee bends, they're breaking a leg. And
okay.
so
Yeah, the ghost thing is interesting. I mean, I think the more complete version is, you know, theaters are haunted by the ghosts who've had successes there over the years. You know, you never get to leave the theater. And of course, they don't want anybody to steal their spotlight, you know, even though they've passed. But apparently when you die in the theater, you become real stupid because these are not smart ghosts. So you trick them because, you know, that they do the opposite because they're not very intelligent for whatever reason. So I've always kind of been like, that's interesting. But there are other ones as well. You know, we call the curtains on the side of the stage, you know, going into the wings, we call those legs. And I don't even know exactly if anyone else wants to chime in. Something about breaking a leg in regard to the curtains themselves. Again, I've never fully comprehended why that was being said in that regard. So,
yeah. Break a leg, like
physically the thing, I don't know. No, but that's a really popular one. You never say good luck, especially on opening night. That's real bad luck.
It makes you crazy. And then they feel so bad, those people. Now, speaking of ghosts, I've also heard 2 conflicting reasons for the ghost light.
Interesting.
Now, the ghost light is every theater has one.
Right.
And it's the light that stays on the stage. It's like just a stand with a bare bulb. I mean, for anybody out there that doesn't know this, it has just a stand with just a bare bulb out in the middle of the stage after the theater closes. So the entire theater is dark except for that one little light bulb. It's called the ghost light. Now, I've heard 2 conflicting reasons. One reason I heard is to keep the ghosts away. But then the other one that I heard, which I prefer and I think is very sweet, is it's so that the ghosts have a place to play after the humans go home. So the spirits can come out and perform, and they have the ghost light to lead their way.
Right, so you know how to get back to center stage right there. Like, I like that one better. That one's a better
too. Now, let's see. And also, just to say again, Fareed, Adrian, Steve, Joaquin, Helene, Richard, you're still here, so that's awesome. And if you have any questions or comments, please chime in. The only people I know here are Fareed and Helene. We know Helene from the tour guiding. Is there any, do you know these folks?
I don't have a way of seeing who these, so other than you saying.
Scroll all the way down, yeah, on the right side of your screen, all the way down. Well, anywho, that's where they are. Well, hi guys, I'm glad you're still here.
Hi, everybody. Well, so we've talked about a couple like superstitious things that we do. There are also some cursed, you know, I guess the Macbeth thing is kind of cursed, but a theater that's actually on Broadway that we go to on the tour is one of my favorite stories. So I'd love to share that if people want to hear. Just because it's kind of funny. It's my way to get like straight guys into the tour. And I'm glad that it happens in the first half because it's not just about theater. It's the story of, I'm going to show another slide just because I have it. It's the story of.
Is it about baseball?
It is about baseball.
Oh, okay.
Oh, great. Richard Arnold says we're doing great. This is fun. Well, please chime in, Richard. If you have anything to
thanks,
add to
Richard.
So this theater, the Longacre Theater, and I'm totally blanking on what year it was built, but I believe it was built.
If only we had the technology. to look it up. You talk and I'll find it.
Google it. It was built by a gentleman by the name of I believe it was Harry Frazee. I know Frazee was his last name. It might be Henry. Again, I live in Vegas, so every single fact is not in my head at the moment. But he was a famous theater owner and Broadway producer. And the whole thing with the Longacre is, it's interesting. There are 41 theaters left on Broadway. And as much as any Broadway show would love to get it into any theater possible, believe it or not, there are certain theaters that shows don't want to go into. There's a hierarchy of, you want this one. And a lot of it has to do with, how big the show is, how much it costs. If it costs a lot of money to mount, you don't want to put it in a small theater because it'll take more time to make your money back, and vice versa. If it's an intimate show, if you put it in a giant barn like the New Amsterdam or the Gershwin, like I can't imagine a show like Next to Normal playing there, because it would be like watching little ants on the stage. So, there are things like that, but then there are theaters that for whatever reason are not as desired because of their history. And this is considered to be like the most cursed theater on Broadway. Insiders know that it's not necessarily a theater that you want your show to open at if you can avoid it, because it has a track record of shows opening and closing very quickly there. And sometimes really great shows opening and closing quickly there. And I'm sure that there are a lot of legitimate reasons as to why that might be the case. Might be that people just don't know that the theater's there. If it's not easily accessible from right in the middle of Times Square, that can be a thing. But the legend is because of the man who built it, Mr. Frazee. What year? What year, Linda?
1913.
1913. Okay, so he was a Broadway producer and a theater owner, but he also owned the Boston Red Sox. So again, this is my get straight guys in there for the tour. If they're kind of like, oh, my girlfriend made me take this. He built this theater, but he also owned the Boston Red Sox. And eventually he was trying to mount the Broadway production of No No Nanette, which I believe was in the 1920s. And he ran out of money. So what did he end up doing to get the financing for the Broadway show? Anybody know before I say it?
Well, I know because I used to give the tour, but
I mean, it's one of the biggest oh no, oh, okay. It's one of the biggest in sports history. Yes.
Oh, there you go, Steve Grimes.
He sold Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees, which not only cursed his baseball team, but it cursed his Broadway theater. So not only did it say the Sox are never going to win the World Series because of this infamous trade, his Broadway theater would forever not be successful. And New Yorkers, if there are two things that New Yorkers love, it's Broadway and the Yankees. And so it was really near and dear to New Yorkers. Now, of course, there have totally been successful shows that have played at the Longacre.
Lacage,
absolutely not on the marquee though. First Date, one of my favorite shows I've seen in New York.
First Date the musical.
First Date, that's what's on there right there. It was a big.
There it is.
Yeah, it was a big flop, but
I'm looking at you.
Oh, you're looking at me. Oh, hi. Anyway, that theater's cursed because of baseball. So blame Babe Ruth, the curse of the Babe. So that's fun. Oh my God, I'm glad someone chimed in with that.
Sold Babe. They just broke that curse recently, though, didn't they? Like a few years ago.
Yeah, the Red Sox did win. So maybe
finally, it's like 100-year curse or something.
Right. Shows are still flopping at the Longacre, so I don't know if it's totally broken yet.
Now, there's a couple of old school superstitions that I don't know if you've ever heard this, that you're not supposed to put your hat on the bed. You know this? Like if you're in a show and put your hat on the bed.
No,
and
I've
it's
never
funny.
heard that.
Because I actually, it's such a weird thing. Like when I'm getting ready to go do a show, if somebody's there and they put their hat on my bed, I kind of freak out. Like you should never put a hat on the bed. Also whistling in the dressing room.
Oh, that's a big thing.
You know that one?
That's a big one. Do you know why for the whistling?
It's something with the ghost. Helene says she's heard about the hat on the bed. It would make sense that Helene had heard of that because Helene, you're French, aren't you? She is. I know she's from France because we were just talking the other day. And people in France, they wear hats a lot.
They do. Linda, do you wear hats in France?
From Paris, yeah.
Um,
Oh.
I don't. So what's the reason behind the hat thing? Because I mean, I can tell you the reason by the whistling, but
Well, here's the funny thing. I never knew the reason behind it, but I always did it anyway.
right.
But now you tell me about the whistling.
Okay, so today everything's like computers. You press a button and the curtains go up. But way back in the day, everything was pulleys, ropes and things like that.
Yeah.
And New York, especially at the time when we were using ropes, was such a big hub for ships of all kinds, military ships, cruise ships, freight ships, and things like that. So there were a lot of sailors. We also love sailors. We love baseball. We love Broadway. We love sailors in New York. Fleet Week is a big thing.
Fleet Week is the best.
The best. So they would employ a lot of sailors actually because they knew how to pull ropes and they had strength. Well, on ships, a lot of communication of when to pull ropes at certain times is done with whistles, and that carried over to Broadway. And so you could really mess up a Broadway show, and people could get hurt if you were whistling on stage or anywhere backstage,
Right.
just because there was a series of very specific whistles that would mean pull up the curtain, pull down because it was the only way they could communicate far apart from each other without walkie-talkies and iPhones and all of that, and probably if you were in like the first or second row of the orchestra, you probably heard whistling if you listen close enough and be like, oh, curtain's coming down now.
Uh-huh.
That's why you're not supposed to whistle in the theater, because it could totally mess with the show itself. So that's the reason behind that one.
This hat on the bed thing.
Are you looking it up?
Of course. No. Well, like when we're doing, hey, come on now, Bobby, how many times have you been doing a tour, leading a tour, and somebody asks you a question,
right?
And you say, oh, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. But maybe later we can look it up, or I'll email you with the answer or whatever. And then when they're not looking, you're just like looking it up on your phone when they're not looking. And then like a little while later you go, oh, I just remembered the answer to your question. You've done it, right?
I'm not even joking.
You have, right?
So many excuses of especially between tour stops, be like, oh, I have to text the office.
Right. Exactly. I'll have my phone and I'm like, God. I'm using the phone because I have to make sure my boss is messaging me about something important, or yeah. And then like right. I'll be looking up the answer. So anyway, I just did that.
Total tour guide trick. Anyone out there who's like, we know lots of things. I would say 95% of our facts are correct, but sometimes we just don't, and I will admit it. At least in the moment,
The secret's out. Oh, Madelyns here. Hey, Madeline. The secret's out. Oh, Helene says, "Do not wear green."
Okay, so do you know the reason behind that one? That's a really good one.
No.
I mean, clearly it's not the case anymore.
Wicked's
on Broadway, and they feature an entire scene where everyone's wearing green. So, and that's because it's really not important anymore, but there's definitely a superstition about it. And that's, I need to find exactly, I have it up right here. Okay, so it's because of a certain chemical of how they used to make lights back in the day, of what they would burn. And it was something that had lime in it, or a lime chemical in it. And that's why we call it the lime light, so there was a green tint to the light in the spotlight.
Ooh.
Because there was a green tint to it, you didn't want to wear anything that might blend with the green, because then it would defeat the purpose. You would get lost in the limelight.
Nice.
So
wow. I just want to say Madeline is here saying we're doing great. So thanks, Madeline. Also want to say I just remembered the answer to that question from before.
Right. Well, oh my gosh. What
did you do? One of the superstitions about the hat on the bed is that people used to believe that evil spirits were sort of like in hair. Like if the evil spirits were in you or around you, they would kind of settle because you know how like hair has electricity. So it used to freak people out. Like if your hair is staticky and it stands up, it would freak people out. And then some people believe that there were evil spirits in your hair. And so your hat would keep the evil spirits in. And so you didn't want to put your hat on the bed, because then you'd like leave the evil spirits in somebody's house. So I don't know.
I believe it. If there are going to be evil spirits anywhere on my body, it's going to be in my hair
It's gonna be in my hair. Oh
well,
wait,
spirits, ghosts. Do you know of any Broadway ghost stories at all?
what about what at the end of the tour, we were across the street. It's funny how I can see it, man. Those streets. This was 42nd Street, or the Deuce, as we used to say, back in the 70s when I lived in New York, and New York was like super cool. You kids, you don't know. But no, anyway, so at the end of the tour, remember that big theater, the one with the Disney? Mary Poppins was there.
This one!
There you go. Who's better than you? So now wait, is that the actual, oh, there it is, yeah. So I can't remember the name of that theater.
The New Amsterdam.
Thank you. The New Amsterdam, which is funny because when you look at it from the front, it looks like this big. But it goes in, and then it's like one of the biggest theaters in the city.
It's one of my favorites.
Do you know the whole story about Olive?
I know parts of it. I don't know the whole thing.
We're putting each other on the spot now.
I have a picture of Olive.
Let's see.
Okay. This is actually one of the that I know. This is a
the
picture.
There she is. Is that in the theater?
Yeah, that's the one that's in the lobby.
Right, because they say when you go to the New Amsterdam to make sure you pay your respects and say hi to Olive because she likes the attention. Now, the New Amsterdam is where they used to have the Follies on the roof, right?
So no, the Ziegfeld Follies were in the actual theater, with.
But then the Midnight Follies was the racy version.
Right. That was the version.
Right. So the Ziegfeld Follies were in the New Amsterdam, right? And they would do their big shows. If those of you who don't know what the Ziegfeld Follies is, you know what? I can't help you.
Just watch Funny Girl.
Hello. Yes. So the Ziegfeld Follies was Ziegfeld was this magnificent impresario who would put on these like fabulous shows during and after the Depression because people needed glamour. Mm-hmm. So the show they would play there, and then at night, like at midnight or whatever, after dark and late at night, they had a thing on the roof. And it was the naughty version, the racy version. Now, Olive was quite the star of these spicy Follies productions. Right. Now, here's where I get a little bit fuzzy. She was having an affair with Pickford's brother, right? Wasn't it Mary Pickford's brother?
Oh, that sounds familiar. Again, I know bits.
I know. What's her Olive curse? I put Olive in here, and for some seeing the
it's taco night.
Yeah. So anyway, long story. Let's make it a short story. Basically, Olive she died a terrible death. She never really got the attention that she wanted as a performer. She ended up the reason for her death, it's very mysterious, and there's a lot of different theories. She drank something and she died of poison. And the theories, some people say she killed herself. Some people say it was an accident. Some people say it was a murder. Whatever the case is, she died way before her time. And it was with this guy, I think it was Mary Pickford's brother that she was dating. They also had a petting zoo on the roof, Helene was saying. Yes, they did. So here's Olive.
The animals would go up there, I think. Yes. Because he had real animals in the shows.
Right, because they had animals in the shows. So Olive dies this terrible death before she really achieved her great stardom. And maybe she was murdered. We don't know. But the superstition is that when you go to the New Amsterdam Theater to this day, which is why they have that picture up in the lobby, you have to say hello to Olive and pay the proper respect and attention. Otherwise, she will haunt the show, and maybe even follow you after you leave the theater and haunt you. So that's
Disney owns this theater, and Disney. I mean, they don't have to play into any of this. I mean, it just goes to show we take this stuff really seriously. Like Disney.
Madeline comments, because I said that maybe Olive took by accident. Madeline says it's never an accident. You know what they say.
Well, some people say
Madeline.
Ghost that she's carrying a blue bottle that they say
Right.
mercury pills. Like some people think she took mercury and killed, and it wasn't an accident. And people say they see her holding the bottle at walking around the theater. So, well, I have a ghost story. I didn't personally encounter it, but it's kind of like 1 or 2 degrees away. Last week, she loves conspiracy theories. So do I. But that's another episode. I mentioned last week that I've worked on one Broadway show. It was The Visit with Chita Rivera, which was at the Lyceum, Miss Linda. I don't know if you've seen, I'm sure you've seen something at the Lyceum over the years. But I have a slide, right? I don't have a slide. Oh, I do. Okay. So this is from when the show, The Visit with Chita, that I worked on, played on Broadway. But the Lyceum is said to be haunted by a couple people, and that's because it's the oldest theater on Broadway. And it's where the archives are kept up in the top in the attic space. It's actually a really cool place. The theater used to be much larger because they used to build all of their own sets, and they used to have like a set warehouse behind the theater. I think that's not there anymore. But I'm going to see if you can guess, Linda, who the theater is haunted by, because this was, like I said, secondhand knowledge from Chita Rivera, who claims that she was haunted by someone's ghost while she was doing the visit. So Chita has a connection to this person. Also with the Lyceum, famously, okay, I know you know what this is, so just blurt it out when you get it. But what is the most famous concert for television featuring a Broadway performer of all time? Like epic, legendary.
Broadway performer?
I mean, all sorts of performer, but yeah, started on Broadway.
Barbra Streisand?
Not Barbara, close. So some might say you looked like her when you were younger.
Liza Minnelli.
Yes, so this is where Liza with the Z was filmed, was at the Lyceum back in the 1970s.
Oh, you know I love to ring them bells.
You loved it, and that happened there. Okay,
Oh.
So what connection do Liza and Chita have together?
Liza and
Like what
Chita.
person? What legendary?
The Rink.
No, yes, they did the show together, of course. But
Judy
what?
Garland?
What? No, I don't know if Chita did anything. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. He was a famous director and a choreographer. Last thing I'll give you. Okay, Bob Fosse.
Fosse.
Bob Fosse directed. There we go. Madeline said it.
Madeline got it.
Bob Fosse directed and choreographed Liza with the Z at the Lyceum. And obviously worked with Chita, not only on the Broadway musical Chicago, but Chita did, I believe, the first national tour of Sweet Charity, and did some other work, with Gwen Verdon over the years. Everybody on the show, because, John Kander and Fred Ebb wrote it, so I got, to work alongside, not with, I don't know him personally, but I met him on many occasions, John Kander, on The Visit. The book was written by Terrence McNally, who's a legendary Broadway playwright. There were a lot of legends involved. Chita claims when they moved into the theater, she couldn't help that no matter where she went, especially if she went up to the balcony, she would smell smoke. And she was convinced by the time we opened that the theater is haunted by Bob Fosse. Convinced.
Oh my gosh.
You could see him in the balcony smoking his cigarette, his famous cigarette. People could smell smoke in this theater, which you can't smoke inside the theaters anymore. You know what I mean? Because it's not the 70s anymore. But yeah, everyone involved says that they're almost certain that the theater is haunted by
You
Bob.
can hardly find a picture of Bob Fosse without a cigarette.
You can't. I mean, even dancing, like he's dancing.
Yeah, like I know. It's crazy. I just want to point out, we have 5 minutes, I think. Right,
Okay.
we have 5 minutes. So I'd love to just in the last few minutes see if anybody has any questions or any requests for like future topics as we do this week to week. I know next week we do have a guest, Eric Williams, we met in the tour company Experience First Back then it was New York Tour 1.
Wow.
And now we're Experience First New York. And I met Eric Williams. I was training him for the downtown New York. So I was like, I had trained him, and now it was time for him to do the tour himself. And I'll just never forget when he was talking about the bank there, the one across from the Trump building, that bank on the corner. Andrew, come on. What's the name of that bank? The famous guy, the banker, the famous banker who was mean with the big mustache, and he would walk around. JP Morgan, thank you. The JP Morgan. So Bobby is at that point in the tour. Eric is at that point in the tour where he's like talking all about JP Morgan, and he's pointing behind him like this with a flourish and confidence. And he was like, behind him was the gym, like this health club. And I'm like, and I let him go because there was people watching. And then afterwards I was like, Eric, the bank you're describing is like in front of you, not behind you. Anyway, we laughed. Oh, how we laughed. Eric has gone on to be very successful in performing and entertaining. He is, if anybody's ever seen a national tour of Elf, the musical, Eric's played Buddy for like several years now, right? Like 3, 4, 5 years in a row. Like he's doing it all the time. Also, Eric, he has a really great cabaret that I want to see. Called Eric and Esther's One Woman Show, which is hilarious. Best title of a show ever. Also, you've seen his face on posters in the subway for coconut water. So we're going to have all those images and information and maybe some clips of his new podcast that he's doing, News from Home during the quarantine. Eric Williams is just a really super interesting, sweet, talented guy that we're going to have on our little show here next week. 2 weeks we'll have Catherine Cates. You can Google these people and look forward to it, but I'll remind you again. Also, I want to thank, we have Fareed and Adrian and Joaquin and Helene and Richard and Madeline and Andrew out there somewhere. I want to thank all you guys for hanging out with us. And I was just about to go there. And of course, all you people out in YouTube and Facebook land, thank you so much. It's so weird because if you know me, you know that my favorite thing in the world is for people just to pay attention to me. Isn't that just a show business thing, Bobby? Yeah, right? Just pay attention to me.
Look at me.
Bisous. Thank you, Joaquin. It was super fun. Also, before we go, again, Madeleine, merci. Send a shout out to all of our comrades out there in the entertainment world, all of you gig workers, independent contractors, entertainers, tour guides, who are hurting for work. Who's that? This is like, she's, just kind of waiting my daughter is back here crawling, waiting for the world to turn again. And especially all our love to Nick Cordero, his family,
not funny.
Family and friends. And seriously, we think about you every day. I know you saw her. That's Taylor. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a crazy world we're living in. And, I think we're all fortunate to be going through this right now at a time where we have the accessibility to go online and do things like this. And not only visiting Broadway, so many people from the community have taken to the internet to sing and dance and tell us jokes and recite Shakespeare. And it's really tough. We're used to doing this in a much different way. So much love to our community right now as we navigate this. I'm in Las Vegas, Helene. That's where I'm at today. That's our last little one. So
we'd love it if you have any requests for topics for the future. I have a lot of ideas for guests we can get up in here. Some of them are pretty fancy, Bobby. I have a few fancy friends who probably want to come on here and
I doubt I'll be able to
their
get,
brain.
but maybe I'll send an email.